So I'm in my series of reviews on the Niner RLT9 RDO, and what I thought I'd do today is just bring my camera with me on a ride and just talk through kind of how I'm getting used to the bike, how it's feeling, some of the things I like about it, if there's any things that I don't like about it. Today's ride is going to be about 40 miles. I'm going to do some intervals in the beginning, and then I'll chill out a little bit and break out the camera and talk through, again, just things that I like about the bike. Yesterday I did a 70 mile, actually about 68 mile gravel road ride. I felt really good at the end of that ride. Part of it, I think, yesterday was the weather just not being so hot. It was really nice to ride in cool weather. I felt really fresh at the end of that ride. In fact, after almost 70 miles, I felt like I could just keep going. I'm gonna head out and then I'll pick it back up when I'm out on the roads and we'll talk through the bike. All right, so I'm about 23 miles into this ride and want to just give some thoughts on the bike after yesterday's ride and today's ride. First of all, the best thing about this bike is how smooth it is on gravel roads. And by the way, when I use the term gravel, it's kind of the generic term. You know, our roads are more lime rock based. We do have the gravel, but it's a lot of lime rock. You know, up in the Florida Panhandle in South Georgia, it's clay. So it's a generic term for just dirt roads. But it's so smooth. And some of the roads around here have recently been kind of redone, and when they first do it, they're kind of pitted and they're real kind of bumpy, and this bike smooths those out really well. And we also get washboards, so especially when it's been real dry. Washboards suck on any bike, but they suck less on this bike. This bike is kind of springy. It absorbs washboards really well. My RLT9 steel also did a great job on washboards. The steel wasn't better than this bike. I think they're about the same, but you know, this bike's about 2 pounds lighter. So also, not only is this bike smooth, but it's also extremely quiet. It's probably the quietest gravel or cross bike that I've ridden on dirt roads. Part of that is because the frame has those channels, so it doesn't, where the cables run. And by the way, you run full cable housing through this frame, and those channels that go from the head tube to the bottom bracket keep the cables from moving around. So this bike is super quiet. So it's just a super smooth, quiet ride is kind of the strong point of this bike. The cockpit, I'm loving these bars. So, you know, I went from being a little apprehensive about them, and now they're super comfortable. And the nice thing about it is when you're on the drops, you just feel kind of large and in charge. Your hands are wider than a normal drop bar, and you feel like you have more control. And I find myself using the drops more on this bike than other bikes that I've ridden with drop bars. One thing I also want to mention about this bike is the fork. So the fork has some serious lateral stiffness. You can really feel it when you're standing up on climbs, and it just does not flex at all side to side, and it makes for just a really good tracking front end. Steering's precise, and like I said, when you're sprinting or just climbing out of the saddle, that remains very stiff. I'm also really liking the tires on this bike. So the 38C tires, I think, are a really good choice. Not too big, not too small. They feel pretty smooth and fast on the paved sections. And you know, I mentioned the tire clearance on this bike, so I don't think you're going to be able to go much more than 40C on the back. But that's okay with me, because I would not go more than 40C. But I know that there are people out there who would want to run a 47C 650B tire, and I don't think you can do it on this frame. So that's honestly the only weakness I've found in this bike so far. Everything else has been so solid. This bike also feels really stable when you're going fast. The maximum speed I've hit so far is about 30 miles an hour on a descent, and the bike feels extremely planted, extremely stable. And I think the faster you go on this bike, the more planted and stable it feels. So what I want to do is try to isolate what makes this bike more comfortable. I think it's really the combination of the flexible seat posts, the frame with that thinner top tube and thinner seat stays, and also the wheels. I think all those things kind of come into play to make this bike super comfortable. But I do want to swap the wheels with my cross bike and just see what kind of difference that makes. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about components when I do this review because I want to focus on the RLT9 RDO itself, but the SRAM Rival has felt really good. It's just, the shifting is just spot on. The front derailleur is working great. I've heard some people mention that they've had problems getting the front derailleur set up. I didn't. I set it up from the get-go and then it's worked perfectly. Braking has been great. I don't notice a whole lot of difference between this and the Force. The only difference that I notice right now, this feels a little bit harder to shift the rear derailleur. There's more effort. I think maybe it's just because it's got to loosen up. I think the Force felt like that when I first got it, but we'll see. And if it doesn't loosen up, I may try rerunning the cables just to see if that helps. But I mean, it's not too bad. It's just not quite as effortless as the Force on my cross bike. So that'll kind of wrap it up for this kind of interim review, just first week or so on the bike. The best way I can describe this bike, like I said, is smooth and comfortable. And the faster and longer and more rough the terrain you ride, the more advantage a bike like this, a pure dedicated gravel bike, is going to have. And this, I mean, I think this RLT9 is probably up there amongst the top choice of pure gravel bikes. So I'll do another review in a few weeks and just let you know if my feelings of the bike and what I like about it continue. So thanks for watching. Hey dude. You like the Niner RLT9 too? Yeah, I know what you mean. Hey guys. Want a Cliff Bar? I was just kidding.